Do you ever finish your workday feeling like you weren't able to accomplish everything on your list? You start with a plan, a list, a goal, but by the end of the day, you find your to do list is even longer and you haven't even reached halfway. Being productive at work can be difficult, which is why we have Gail Wilson, a life and a corporate coach, here to give us some tips. Good morning, Gail.
Morning, madam. Thank you for having me again.
It's always a pleasure and thank you for joining me. Right, so first of all, why do people become less productive at work, especially after doing something for a while?
Miriam, I was actually, you mentioned this topic to me and I've been giving it a bit of thought. And I came across some writing that I thought was really interesting. And it says, happy people are more productive people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to that maybe we can discuss this from a different take point. I think everybody knows the older cliche things, write it down, cut down your to-do list, all of those things. But definitely companies throughout the world, your Fortune 500 companies and all of those, have come to see that happiness and productivity are directly related.
Mm-hmm. Now, what are some habits of highly productive people?
Yeah, so maybe I can chat to you about there's a kind of model that we look at in corporate coaching.
Yes.
When we look at habits, we're referring to people's behavior. So in the block, we have something where we say people are willing and people are able. So that obviously is the ideal space to be in for an individual and the ideal work person to have. But you also then have somebody that is maybe willing but not able. So in that case, it's going to be let's address this with training. And again, for the individual, it's really finding the courage to say, I need help. So a lot of low productivity comes from individuals that actually are not able to do the job up to standard. And the responsibility often then falls on them to actually ask for help. So it's courageous and to ask for help. And, in my experience, we find kindness in unexpected places. And very often, most times when we ask for help, we will be helped.
Mm-hmm.
And then another one they talk about there, they say the person is not willing and maybe able, or maybe not willing and not able. But we look at the not willing, and the biggest indicator for low performance is this lack of willingness. And lack of willingness and lack of happiness often go together. Think about how you've got a task you must do. It comes to mind when I do my billing every month. I hate doing billing. I hate it. And it's an example of how you don't like something and your performance is low in that area. They have this interesting statistic that they say. They say that 97% of your happiness is not determined by your external factors, your
Mm-hmm.
external circumstances. 97% of your happiness is determined by your mind and how you approach things and how you think about things.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now, when it comes to enthusiasm, how does productivity and enthusiasm go hand in hand? How do they work together?
It's huge. Enthusiasm, this whole is happiness. When we talk about happiness, we can also talk about purpose. Um, I can give you a very interesting synopsis from my side. So, and maybe an interesting little exercise for listeners to do now. And I would say that then maybe it's not the second as you're listening, but try and do it straight away after this so that you don't put it off and you don't do it. Sit down and write out the top five values. So what is those top five values? And when I say values, I don't necessarily moral things. I mean, what is the things in your life that have value for you? So now what we can find in the work environment. So let's say my values are, just to give you two, excellence is one of my values. And then another one of my values is adding values to others' lives. So let's say I'm in the work environment and I'm doing emails all day. So let's be honest, nobody's really going to like that very much. So often we look for enthusiasm in the work that we do, as opposed to start taking a step back and saying, what is my value and what can I bring to the work, as opposed to what can work bring to me. So an example of this interview would be, I would want to conduct it with excellence, and then I would want to add value to it. What about if, let's say, somebody was let's say somebody in the toll gate booth, that could be a very repetitive job. Maybe there's this excellence, so they smile at you, they take your money friendly, they thank you for seeing, and I think you've seen two people in the same job, and the one's getting enjoyment out of it, and he's productive, and the other one is not productive and not getting enjoyment out of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, how can we overcome challenges like procrastinating or boring work that just needs to get done? Staying motivated and energized. How can we overcome those challenges?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if any of your listeners have heard Mel Robbins, and she's got the five second principle. So she says, go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because after the note, we decide we're not going to do it. And I don't think we particularly ever become highly motivated about things we don't like. But it's to just, we mustn't only do stuff in life that, that makes us happy. It's impossible to live in a continual state of happiness. So it's to say that my job is 100%, and maybe 40% of those things are going to be things that are going to make my eyes glitter. The other 60 are part of the job, and to approach the whole thing with that healthy 97% attitude.
Mm-hmm. All right. How can we be more productive whether you've been on the job for 1 year or 10 years? I know the procrastination and the boringness and the lack of motivation, they tend to creep in, especially when you've been doing something for a while.
Yeah, as you say that, I've got a beautiful expression. I've got a little vision board that I have on my phone, and one of those little vision boards says aim higher. And I'm a firm believer that if you are not moving forward, you are not standing still, you are going backwards. So it's to continually set goals for ourselves. Even your little daily lists and things, but those are
Mm-hmm.
goals. So set standards for yourself, set goals for yourself every day. And always be growing, always learning, always embracing new things. You don't say to people, there is no reason to be uninformed, unmotivated, uninspired, without direction. We have so much access to media today. We can go online, we can go Google people, we can look at successful people, it's so important to always be aiming higher.
Mm-hmm. Right, Gail, and Going forward, what tips would you like to share with our listeners?
Going, I'm sorry, I missed it, Miriam.
Going forward, what tips would you like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I can, so I would really like the listeners to take 5 minutes and write down those five values in your life. What are your top five values? Maybe it's family, maybe it's social, maybe it's work, maybe it's whatever it is. And let those five values guide you through your life. Yesterday I was coaching somebody and she said she was just unhappy in her life. And I said to her, you're not a tree, move. And really advice I can give people. I think always try to find happiness where you are. But if there's not happiness where you are, then happiness somewhere else. Start work on
Mhm.
a plan to move to that other place of happiness.
All right, that is so true. If you're not happy, then leave and find something that does make you happy because it's pointless.
Exactly.
You're not going to be productive, and you are just making it the situation even more difficult for you and your employer.
Yeah.
Gail, thank you so much for your time once again and for the advice and tips there. I hope our listeners took heed and will be making use of them going forward.
Great. Thank you, Mariam.
Have a wonderful day. Bye bye.
Bye.
Right, that was life and corporate coach Gail Wilson giving us some tips on how to be more productive at work, especially after you've been there for a while. Maybe you've been there for 5 years or 10 years, and you find that it's now something that you do not want to do anymore. Perhaps find something that does make you happy and makes you complain less when you get home. Do stay with us. We will be